Yeah, we are live. I'm late. It's 9:30. A couple hours late, in fact. But today I want to talk about something, or tonight I want to talk about something else. Check this out. Yeah, one size fits all, or one size strips all. Tonight I want to talk about actually intake manifolds, and the thumbnail that I have up is a Brian Tooley Racing Trinity, Trinity intake manifold. And so I wanted to ask you guys for your input on what you thought might help make this manifold even better. So here are the couple of things I want to talk about. Or if these are things I'm going to try. I'm going to actually do a modified version of this manifold because I've been running that manifold, or had run that manifold on the 5.3 liter, where we're running it out fairly high, where this manifold would do well at, 75, 76, 7700. It's making decent power out there. It made more power than the Holley low ram did. And I want to keep trying it and trying new things to have it make more power. And one of the things that I want to try, and I want to get your guys' input on this, you guys let me know, make comments even after the video. You don't have to just do it on the live feed, but make comments after you see the video. But I'm curious to see what you think. Right now, this thing has 100 and somewhere between 102 and 105 millimeter throttle body. I don't know exactly what size they did. I thought it was 102. It might be 103. It might be as big as 105 to use with the Holley throttle body. But what I want to know is, do you think that that's enough? Is that enough flow to support? Like right now, we're in the 540 to 550 horsepower range with the 5.3 at a fairly high RPM, which means more airflow. But the question is, do we need more airflow? And really more than just that, because I can tell you this, when I have run the Holley high ram with this single throttle entry like this, with 105 millimeter throttle body, 105 millimeter opening on the lid, because they also sell a 90 or 92 millimeter version also, but this is with the 105. When we run that, and when we take that off and we put another lid on it that has like a dual quad top, even if we don't run fuel through it, which is good, but if we don't run carburetors on it, if we run 4150s on it, or even 4500s, because they have a lid for that too, they seem to make more power. And I don't know if this is, is this a function of that the single inlet didn't flow enough? Is there something else that's happening inside from, the direction of flow? Are we feeding some cylinders more than the other because of where the entry is relative to the placement of all the cylinders? If we have two throttle bodies above all the cylinders, are we getting better airflow distribution, like an even amount to all of them, where maybe some of them aren't getting starved with the single inlet, but some of them are, and then none of them are? Is it a situation like that? Let me know what you guys think. I'm curious what you guys think in the comments. But how can I make this manifold better? And that's one of the things that I want to try. I'm not trying to redesign their manifold for them. I just wonder if we're at a point, or at which point do we seem to think that there might be more power to be had? The other thing that that Brian Tooley did back there, is they welded one of these up and put a larger inlet on it. They put a 125 millimeter opening on it, I think, and then also made the plenum bigger, which they say that they have tested on a couple of different things and had shown no gain, and then showed gain on some of the other ones. So I'm curious to see if that's an airflow thing, or if it is if it is indeed a plenum volume thing. I haven't seen big changes in plenum volume when I've tested it. That's not to say that I wouldn't, try. So the other thing that I'm kicking around is, if we took the runners, which the runners on this manifold go into the plenum, so they stick out proud basically inside the wall of the plenum. Well, I'm curious if we made a bigger plenum, and what I'm thinking of is I want to do two throttle bodies on top of this plenum. So I'm either gonna cut and weld a plate on top of here, just the way that it is, and then put throttle bodies on there. Or the other thing that I was thinking is, given the angle of the runners, I'm wondering if this thing wouldn't benefit from, first, more plenum volume, but an angled tunnel ram style lid going up to the two throttle bodies, to give angle for the airflow to go into. It's not going to totally match the angle of the runners, because the runner would go up like this, and then the wall would go up like this. But rather than be straight, if I put a little bit of angle to it, maybe that would do something. Let me know what you guys, again, let me know what you guys think in the comments. Let me know if there are other things that you could think. I was thinking about putting a throttle body on the back of it. It's kind of a push me, pull you kind of thing, so that we could open both of them. But I think ultimately having them on top probably would be better. And whether we use like 4-hole throttle bodies, which makes it easy. I mean, the linkage is never going to be an issue anyways. It's all going to be the Super Richie drive-by-wire throttle linkage. Just like when I run this tri-power on the Pontiac, that will definitely be a drive-by-wire as well. But you know, whether we have two big 102 millimeter throttle bodies, like fast ones, I think we've got a couple of those laying around. So we run 2 of those from West Tech, run those on top, or 2 of the 4150s, you know, so it looks like a dual quad kind of thing. Excuse me. I'm curious to see if that is worth more power now that we're at, are we at a high enough power level? I mean, I know that we've made more power than this with a single throttle body. You know, we've done 600 plus stuff horsepower with that single throttle body. But I still want to try it. I want to test it. I want to ruin a manifold. I want to ruin at least the plenum version of that. I want to ruin that and see if we can gain something, you know, because you don't know until you try that stuff. And then maybe that's something that the guys from Brian Tooley Racing, if we find out that is beneficial, maybe that's something that they would offer as a center section for guys. It's be mostly for, you know, drag race guys that are doing it. But it would be interesting to see. And I'm just looking for new ways to gain more power from this 5.3. I talked to Lake Speed at the MPMC conference, and after showing him the video of it blowing all the smoke out the header, he's like, "Oh yeah, that thing's tired." I said, "Yeah, it has 500 pulls on it, or 499 pulls on it so far." I said, and I don't know what it was kind of shape it was in when I got it. So it seemed like it wasn't, you know, great. It's good, obviously, and it's making good power, because if it's making between 540 and 550, it's doing fairly well. But I think that there's more there from a better ring package, you know, maybe a ball hone and then a ring package, and then put it back together and see what's there. We will check the pistons and see if there's a flared opening on the ring grooves. You know, we'll just check that stuff up and see. But it would be cool just to do a ball hone, put rings in it, do you know, break-in cycles to get the ring and the bores acquainted, and sealing back up, and see if we see a change in power. That'd be interesting. I haven't really done a ring test like that, and that would be kind of cool. It's a ring and bore thing together, so it's not just a ring package. And I don't know. I honestly don't know. You know, maybe we could do a ring tension thing, or the zero gap rings or whatever. We could try to do those, but it would be interesting. I think that there's definitely some there, some more power there from sealing, because we're not sealed up the way that we could. And in this case, given what's going on there, maybe this would also be a good case for like a vacuum pump or something, so we could get some of that stuff out. But you know, we'll have to see. But on the intake manifold, I want to do dual quads on there. And then also, what do you guys think? Let me know what you guys think. Plenum volume, do you think that that's going to do anything? Do you think that the throttle body's on there? And that will be our poll for tonight. I remember, I think it's 540 horsepower, something like that. We'll say 545. We'll split the difference. Will dual throttle bodies make more power than a single 105 millimeter on the 545 horsepower, 5.3 liter? Let's see what people think. And then in the back of your mind, be thinking, hey, what if he did something to plenum too? I'm first thinking of not doing something to plenum, but the more I look at it, I'm leaning towards more plenum volume. I mean, we could go in there and add runner length, that would definitely change the power curve. But I think to the negative side. But again, that's why we try some of that stuff, because that way you can go, oh yeah, let's check that off the list. That was a no. That's over in the no column. But once in a while you get some in the yes column, and that's what makes it all worthwhile. Let's see what you guys got going on for tonight. Prestige, you don't want to miss it, just in case we talk about modular stuff again. Dual length runners and Emmerich valves. Yep. Strip-o-matic. That's right. I know this is one of my favorite things I got from MPMC. It's the all 16ths. Works on all. Do you think the 1999 V10 manifold is good? The stock one? I think it's a long runner manifold designed to make low speed torque, which is exactly what that thing does. It'd be interesting test using widebands on each header primary to test distribution between single 102 and dual 4500 or 4150s. Yeah, I kind of don't think that there would be a change in distribution, but maybe. I have a Performer 2 drag van. Let's have a Performer 2 intake manifold on my small block move part that's ported to match the heads. Was thinking about going to RPM air gap, but was wondering if I would gain much in a van. There's no room. A Performer 2 versus an RPM air gap. An RPM air gap should be better than a Performer 2. So Richie, dual plenum would improve at 100%. I don't know about that. Dual throttle bodies, dual quads. Exhaust manifold leaks at the gasket common on LS truck engines. No, the gasket leaks are not, unless what is common on really high mileage truck stuff is a lot of times the exhaust manifold bolts will break. So the heads will snap off, or the bolt will break somewhere, so sometimes inside the head, but usually outside the head. And then that can cause the leaks. Custom upper with 402 millimeter throttle bodies. I don't think there's room for 4 of them. Ford says dual throttle bodies work. Exhaust manifold leaks very common on LS trucks. Yeah, broken bolts. Good evening, Richard. Howdy. The best way for me to tell you to improve the intake manifold is to add a turbo. That's right. It's just add boost, right? Old rings versus new rings would be a cool test. Yeah. The problem is we can't really just put rings on it, because I don't know that it's just a ring issue. I don't know if the rings are worn out or if also the bore is worn out with, I don't know how many miles are on that motor. So I just pulled the manifolds to swap from the 4.8 to the 5.7 and found 2 bolts were broken from the previous owner before 2016 when I bought the truck. So it makes me think the 4.8 was touched. Yeah, we went through, Troy, bless his heart, had to weld up a bunch of those and weld nuts onto them and spin them out. My mechanic says I need a 500-mile break-in period because of my new cam, main, and rod bearings, along with new rings and ball hone. You need a longer break-in, or a long break-in period, like 500 miles, typically for flat tappet cams, but not for roller stuff. So the bearings and the cam bearings or the rod bearings or the main bearings don't really need that long to wear in. Having a break-in is good for the rings to get acquainted with the cylinder walls, but primarily it was camshaft. It was cam, lobe, and lifter acquaintance. What would be neat to be dyno it, then reseal it, and then dyno it again in the same configuration. How much you get from sealing? What do you mean sealing? Like reseal it? Do you mean after honing it and putting rings in it? Embedding dual 102s won't be worth much. Have you ever tested gains of a vacuum pump on a big cubic inch high RPM LS? I haven't done that on an LS. The guys from Westech have done it many times on a lot of different motors, and the gains from a vacuum pump vary with your ring pack. But sometimes it's worth power and other times not a lot. More plenum volume. Yeah, I'm voting yes. Okay. The gaskets were MLS GM units, but the other bolts and then the flange studs did not break when I got them off. We've taken some apart where it's not been where the bolts come out of the exhaust manifolds. The Dark Horse Mustang did it. The Dark Horse Mustang did what? Use the dual throttle body thing? 292 with a carbureted M90. We ran the M90 in 2 carbureted configurations already, one with it on the top and one with it feeding the back. I could also get clever and remote mount the blower and blow through the carburetor. Always remind me the Focus NA custom intake gains. And it causes you to sell finger hold. Exactly. That was such an amazing thing. Was bolt-ons and nitrous LS1, but I got 13-1 HCI 408. That should be good. How about we talk about Ford 460 mod, since the previous 460 mod video is mostly LS Dodge and some Honda. We did talk about, were you not here for the beginning of that video? Where the first 10 or 15 minutes of every video is a discussion on a particular subject, usually on the thing that's on the thumbnail. Like in this case, we talked about Ford 460 mods. But then it's question and answer after that, so you can ask whatever you want. But did you have questions about modifications to 460? Because in the first 15 minutes, I went through a bunch of mods and we talked about the power gains and stuff. So were you there for all that? I know some Kawasaki sport bikes have twin injectors per cylinder. Yeah, moving the injector can gain power. Wouldn't ITBs both be the most direct path of airflow into the cylinder? In fact, that on that manifold, they took the plenum off and ran it as an IR manifold, but the direct path thing is not the thing that makes power. There are other things that go into a manifold design that don't have line of sight in mind when they're making power. Remember TPS offering a milling service for the Gen 2 LT1 and LT4 intakes to mill to a mono blade. Yeah, you could, and we did that, used to do that on the Ford stuff too, on the Coyote stuff. You would machine out the center of the dual throttle body deal, and then just you could put a big blade in it. Kenny Bell used to offer those for their blower things, and guys were putting them on their NA motors too. How much nitrous can a stock 5.3 take? The most I've ever run is a 300 shot on a stock one from the wrecking yard. Actually, it wasn't a stock one. It was a it had a cam in it. Why do not equal length and accommodate clickwise pulse to suction composite manifold? I don't know what you mean by that. My engine build's almost done. Just need EFI fuel lines. So they would spontaneously break on the bolts. It's usually the outer ones that break first. I think I have at least one bad one on my truck, and maybe 2 now. They don't spontaneously break. They break from usually they break from expansion. I've never seen twin throttle bodies per cylinder on an engine. 2 throttle bodies per cylinder? I don't know why you would do that. They were sticking out ahead, so I can use a stud puller. Yeah, you can do that. What we did was screw on nuts to them and then welded the nut to the stud and then just use that to pull the stud out and then throw it away. Let's see. What did you do with that LS1? Which LS1 are you talking about? I do also have all new heads and new valve train and cam, pretty much an entire engine rebuilt. I can hardly wait for 500 miles. I remember my first rebuild that I did with my dad and my Camaro, and we rebuilt that engine and put it in and stuff. And drove it around, and that 500-mile break-in, because I adhered to that too. I'm pretty good about that. But before you could like go race it around, it was very hard to do. Hone, rings, whatever, it needs to be freshened up and not leak out the magic. Yeah. Offenhauser used to make a dual port intake. I wonder if a dual port with different lengths on the runners with two different throttle bodies would give a wider torque peak. I just don't know how you could do two throttle bodies unless they're very, very small going to the same port. Have you ever heard of putting a pistons with new rings dry? An old school in car boring guy said it seals the rings immediately. To put them in dry, I don't think I would do that. Australia's in the house. What's the loosest piston ring gap you've seen an engine have and run? I've run 35 thousandths on a, it was either on the 4.8 or the 5.3, and it still ran fine. Build a slide valve snap manifold, use a solenoid to uncover the top half of the manifold and shut it down using fuel and spark the throttle body. That's what they did with this one. They ran the, James even figured out a way to configure the dyno because they have a power mark, I think, so that they could start the motor with no throttle on it. I've never done that. What we always do is when we test a manifold like that and remove the, we usually remove a lid. Like on the FR500, we just go to wide open throttle, and then I'm just standing in there and I just pull the lid off, and then it runs as an IR manifold. And then shutting it off is easy. You just kill the ignition, and then that shuts the motor off. Toyota 22R was the engine he bored out for me. This community is really helpful to get information to use and disseminate. Yeah, there's a lot of good guys here. There's a lot of guys here that can answer questions. Richard, I remember a guy telling me dirt track engines, a build trick he learned was from a top engine builder, was on a fresh bore job, was to take a plastic toilet brush and run it in the bore first before installing the piston. That's not a bad idea to clean it, because after it's been bored and honed, there's still a lot of stuff in there. Because if you take I always clean them really good. So we clean them with brake clean, and I keep cleaning them until I don't get any more residue coming out on a white paper towel. And then I just put transmission fluid in there. You could use a lot of things, anything. I just like having something on there. And I'll use either oil or transmission fluid, and then I'll also put some on the inside of the the ring compressor, and then on the skirt of the piston and on the rings too. I just don't want it to catch on anything really. Richard just picked up a 94 F-150 with a 300 inline six, so now I gotta know, do you have any videos on a 300 that I could binge watch? Not yet, but I plan on doing 300 stuff. That's what he's saying. It helped to break in faster. I don't know that I want to do that. I would have to see. I'd have to see like real results on that, and maybe for a motor that's going to come apart right away, that wouldn't be an issue. I just would like to see what happens to that. I voted no. I think the 5.3 is not the limit of the 105 millimeter. Yep, that makes sense. Like I said, we've made more than that, so that's some good logic. I think the one with more airflow would make more power overall. Yeah, I mean that stands to reason. The problem is that if it has enough airflow to support the power level, more airflow doesn't really do anything, because more airflow potential, that's like putting a 105 millimeter throttle body on a stock 5.3. It does flow more and could support more power. It's just that the little 5.3 doesn't need anymore. So are we there already with the big throttle body? That's what I don't know. Wouldn't happen to have a single budget 5.3 Gen 4 build, would you? Got a stage 3 BTR cam. What else other than a stall would I need? Do I have any videos of 5.3 builds on my channel? Is that what you're asking? I have lots of them. There is all manner of 5.3 things up there. Oh, by the way, does anybody have? I'm looking for 5.3 aluminum blocks. They could be damaged, like if the what I want to do is sleeve them. So if they're damaged on the sleeves, if they're rusty or whatever, if they're damaged inside the cylinder, please let me know. If anybody has any 5.3 aluminum blocks, let me know. I'm looking for some, or at least one. Will nitrous ever be more popular at the strip, more in the future, or less? Nitrous has always been popular, but I think turbo stuff, it kind of makes more power. Richard, what exactly is a sloppy cam? The sloppy is just reference to Matt Happel and Sloppy Mechanics, his group. So a sloppy stage 2 cam is a cam. It was started out as an Elgin cam that was just a cam that was inexpensive that Matt used on a lot of stuff, and it got to be popular because he found out the same thing that some of us have known for a really long time, that you can take a camshaft and run it on turbos and NA stuff and 4.8s and 5.3s and 6.0s, and it always does what the cam does. It's fine. It doesn't have to be specific for a thing. And so it got to be so popular. It was inexpensive. It made power, and he promoted it, and that's what turned into being a sloppy stage 2. And then they came out with smaller ones, sloppy stage 1, bigger ones, sloppy stage 3. You can improve the manifold by offering exchangeable length intake runners inside the plenum, so it wasn't 2 inches of runner length. Is there something about the small block Chevy that does not lend itself well to a Holley high ram removable lid intake manifold? They don't make one for a small block Chevy that I'm aware of. Maybe part of that is the problem with that is that they're the runners are Siamese together, so maybe it doesn't lend itself as well because of the position of the ports. If you look at all those other ones, the LS, the Ford, the Hemi, they're all symmetrical ports, or the port alignment is not Siamese. They're an equal distance apart, so it makes it easier to make the manifold like that. I would assume that a Gen 4 5.3 is pushing some good numbers with a cam alone. Not necessarily a Gen 4, but a Gen 4 5.3 might not make any more power than a Gen 3. Some of the Gen 4 stuff has, like the HO stuff or the aluminum stuff, has flat top pistons in it. And some of those have a little bit better camshaft. So they're rated at like, 10 or 20 or 25 horsepower, maybe more than the stock one. They also, some of them have 243 heads on them. I don't think at this power level that's really any of a gain, really, in my opinion, compared to an 862 or a 706 headed one. But the earlier ones, the Gen 3 stuff, like the Elm 7s, have dish pistons in them. I have 36 on my 455, runs fine, doesn't burn any oil. What's the bore size on a 455? We had 56 on the bottom ring. Yeah, that's going to be too much. That's going to be problematic. That was the first time I've ever touched the manifold. It surprised me that the bolts are broken. Yeah, no, that's not even from somebody abusing them. That's from age and temperature cycles. Would swapping 243s on my LT4 truck Norris would be worth it? I have 706 heads now. I have video up on a 6-liter with a cam in it of comparing a 799 head and a 706 head, so you can see what they do, and you can decide if you want that. The bigger heads made more power at the top, but less below 5,000. So again, it's a trade-off thing. You have to decide which one of those would be more important to you. Bitcoin starting to go sicko mode again. So is it going up again? So should I invest? Is that what you're saying, or am I already too late? You have a suggestion for a single plane intake 427 small block Chevy drag engine application? Edelbrock Super Victor 2 seems to be popular. That's what's going to be my suggestion. think the only improvement beyond optimized runner length would just be a butterfly valve dual runner setup, like the new Coyotes have, and then the Z06 valves open up for shorter runners. Yeah, a dual runner thing is kind of cool. Usually what happens on a dual runner thing is the dual runner stuff tends to make less power than either a down low than either a fixed long runner one, and makes less power up top than a fixed short runner, but it has the benefit of the other part of it that a fixed runner doesn't have. 427 Windsor, Novi 2200. Intercooled. Should I break in NA on E85 or just connect everything and break it in with the Novi 2000 connected Dominator? I would break it in with, unless it's a really high compression NA motor, I would like to break it in NA, and I would break it in NA on gas. And then once it's working right, then I would put E85 in it and the blower. Just looking for a simple Gen 4 build. Can't find anything on YouTube. Want to make a fun four-door truck that sounds good. There's no difference between building a Gen 4 or a Gen 3. The build is exactly the same. Just tell me how much power you want, and we'll tell you what to put in your 5.3, in your Gen 4 5.3. The Gen 4 isn't any different. I mean, it might have yours might have a flat top piston, and it might have a 799 or a 243 head instead of an 862 or depending on which one it is. And it might have a Trailblazer SS intake manifold on it, but you still have to decide how much power you want, and then we'll just tell you what cam to put in it. Good old sloppy TH2. Then you have the loans like me that are running both big turbo and 40 shots to light it off. That works. The Offenhauser dual port setup had 2 throttle bodies for the engine and not for each cylinder. Okay, that makes more sense. I was wondering how you would get 2 for each cylinder. That doesn't make any sense. What makes it sloppy? I should have asked. There's nothing. Like I said, it's just in reference to sloppy mechanics, just to that group. Yeah, Matt's a good guy. He's pretty knowledgeable. He does a lot of good stuff over there. And what gets you more excited, seeing a modern Ferrari or a random old crusty hatchback? Actually, seeing an earlier Ferrari, one that I recognize, but a brand new one I might not recognize. I much prefer a McLaren F1 to even though newer stuff is probably faster. I still like that car better. But I do like. In fact, I was just talking to Chad today about the Civic VX, and he was saying how often people come up to him and recognize it and are like, "Dude, that's an EG hatch." Yeah. Is that a VX? Yes, it is. And I told him if he put, I've been trying to get on him to do this, and I wanted to do this when I had it too. I told him if you put the VX decals on there, I said you'll get stopped all the time. People will come up all the time because some people don't recognize it because it's just so plain with no stickers or anything on it. But the guys that know recognize the fact that, oh, look, that has VX wheels on it. Some guys know. When you know, you know. I talked to the camshaft builder at Urson. He said that the TQ50 camshaft with the valve separation of 112 will work great with nitrous, being an everyday driver with power brakes. Yeah, I mean, any cam will work with nitrous. The camshaft doesn't care. The nitrous just adds to whatever's there. 112 LSA. I don't know what the rest of. I need to kind of know what the rest of the specs are. But a wider LSA tends to idle a little better. Now prepping LS3 block with a 4-inch crank using the cam you sold me should be fun. Yes, that's a good combination. An LS3 block with a 4-inch crank makes usually, if you put cylinder head on it, which it will have some kind of good cylinder head on it, it will make power. I dream of AE86s. Those are nice with house paint. Driving through town when I slept, not a Ferrari. Well, and I mean, I have an Omni GLH. Not even a real GLHS. I don't even have real GLHS money. I wish it was GLHS money. I Did not like my VW Golf GTI 1.8T engine because after racing the car, the turbocharger would feel weak on the next race in Arizona. So did it have did it not have enough flow to the intercooler or something? Four 156 on my 455. Yeah. So the what did you say? It was 36 or something like that. 35 or 36. That's more in line because you have more. You have a bigger bore size. Drag van will run whatever cam you want. Excuse me. If you need more vacuum, just wire up a C7 brake booster to turn on. Is it an electric one or something to turn on when the brakes are on? I bought one for $100 used. Does adding cubic inches to an engine change the operating RPM of the camshaft? And does it lower raise peak horsepower RPM if only CID is if cubic inches change? Yes, it does. It tames the cam down and makes the cam milder. So if you run the same cam in a 302 Ford and a 351 Ford, the 351 Ford will make power at a lower engine speed. Got a hunch theory that we'll see a pullback on the BTC price very temporarily soon. Okay. Yeah, could I do a GoFundMe for a McLaren F1? Okay, I already got bolts and flanges. Studs will be using dry film lube on them, then anti-seize because I may get long headers down the road. Okay. Displacement won't change the RPM. No, it 100% will. Richard, are those extra throttle bodies more about smoother airflow than increasing CFM? It might be. That's what I was talking about. It might be the angle of attack. It might be distribution. There are other things besides just total flow that I think could be, was needed on a 5.3 to make 450 wheel horsepower. Not very many pounds of boost, just a couple. 7 or 8 probably. I believe the engine will only intake the volume of air it needed to efficiently fill cylinders. Your engine can flow. When you want to cram more volume of air, you can, but that's for forced induction. Okay. Yeah, no, we know it'll take in the amount of air that it needs. I don't need much in a 6-liter NA on E90 on pump gas is where I'm at. I have a single turbo I plan on putting on it, but the car is amazing already. It's only been a month, but I'm content so far. That's good. Thanks to my grandma, dude has one for 1,000,000 years. VX, he is shocked when I told him it was cool 20 years ago. Yep. Impression is pretty high for a supercharged money, 11-1. But are you, but 11-1 you can run on pump gas though, because I'm sure you have a pretty good sized camshaft in it. I'm sure you have aluminum heads. But yeah, if you want to run it on the 85, you just run it on the 85. I'm off to bed. All right, man. Yeah, it is getting late, huh? Yeah, I'm gonna this show will actually be a little short. The new T50 is worth a look. Yeah, I've seen that, but I don't like that nearly as well as I like the F1. Never really been a fan of supercars. My mom drove an 85 Ferrari or whatever they are. Yeah, Mondial. They're cheap feeling. We parked the Corvette in the garage and the Ferraris in the driveway. C7 brake booster thing is electric. Okay, that's cool. I dream of an 89 to 94 Suzuki Swift GT G13 double over cam cars. I've been talking to the Hudson boys, and they've done amazing things with these G series motors. They've done lots and lots of crazy stuff. I'm very excited about doing stuff with them at Bonneville. Richard, how would you make a comfortable 400 horsepower NA on a 5.3? You just put it on the dyno and then put a cam in it, and then it makes 400. If I hit the lottery, one of the first things I would do is hook Rich up with an F1. That's nice. You'd have to hit a big lottery to just be giving away McLaren F1s. Spent the last 3 months wiring up my E90 on the weekends, and it still has a couple of bugs, but it looks great. That's cool. What would be a good eBay turbo to use on a 2.3 to get around 350 or 375? A GT3076 is probably what I would put on that. You might even go, man, I might even go smaller than that. Oh, but on a 2.3, I wish I knew what the I think that they're whole sets. I'll have to ask Jimmy from HP Performance. He used to have 46 and 57 millimeter, and I think that they were whole sets, and those actually work pretty good. We used to run those as twins on the 4.6 stuff. How difficult is a 4R70 rebuild? Does anybody know, or something that can handle 1,000 horsepower? That's going to be money too to do that. But does anybody know about the trans rebuild on it? I've never done that. 228, 231, 472 lift. Yeah, that's pretty mild on a 408. I don't know if the dual throttle buys will make more power, but they'll have more cool points. They will, and it will be a one-off thing. I guess the shipping cost to you, Richard, and from here in Tennessee, were 8 years since I did it from out there. What were you wanting to ship? Would a chopper be a good replacement? They have all damn near specs. A chopper is a good cam. I have video up of where we tested it against the Truck Norris cam. It did really well. What about suggestion for a good 4500? Don't they make a 4500? Don't they make a Dominator flange Super Victor for the small block? They have to. What the heck's going on here? Oh, I hit that with my thing. I hit that with my purse. What's this 2970? Yeah, they have a small block. They have a small block 4500. The one I'm looking at is Edelbrock 2970 Super Victor 4500 series intake manifold, $544. I saw Honda proves down to 86 octane in their CBR race bikes. How do they do that? Compression ratio is 12 to 1. Well, they're 12 to 1 static, but they have lots and lots of camshaft in them, and they probably have knock sensors on them. Should I try running my 70 or 78, 75, 351 for street use? I would put the 70 on it and then see what happens, see how you like it. Have you ever done a test on low octane versus high octane? I've never done, I have run 87 on some stuff because we've put some motors together that were low enough compression that made enough power that we could run them on. They still made the same power on 87. and on 90, as they did on 91, because we could run all the timing that the motor wanted. And so we've done that. And then E85 on makes more power on boosted stuff, and on some really high compression NA stuff it does too. Maybe a whole set HX35. I don't know. I'll have to ask him and see. Jimmy will probably know. I'll ask him tomorrow. My 2.5 Common Dodge has the very turbo. GT30 is a perfect little turbo for that size motor. I would think so. I would think that a 3076, and that gives you quite a bit of room too. How well does it work on the? How is the spool on that on the 2.5? Richard, are you in need of 5.3 L33 aluminum blocks? I have a good one. Yeah, I am. If anybody has them, please let me know. Overbuilt. Here, I'll put my email and send it to me. Richard seems to be more like a C4 Callaway twin turbo guy. I have done videos and magazine articles on that, because in fact, it was the kit that my buddy from Jimmy from HP Performance did for the C4 Corvette for the TunePort stuff. And when we first ran it, I remember thinking, wow, this thing doesn't make very much power. Oh, what's going on? This turbo motor should make a lot of power. And I got to thinking, well, it didn't make any power NA. so it's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's just multiplying the torque, because that's what it had a lot of. And it did do exactly that. Torque Storm Supercharger or turbo. Depends on what you're trying to get done. They do different things, definitely. I know, who doesn't like a Callaway? Would getting 102 millimeter fast LS6R intake require porting a 706 heads? No. I'm stuck between that or a Trailblazer SS. I have an LSA Supercharger plan for the future. If you're going to put the blower on, save the money on the intake, because you're going to have to get rid of that. Although you could sell it later on. Just run the Trailblazer SS for right now if you already have that. The way you can jump back and forth on different conversations is pretty amazing. I forget a lot of stuff, so sometimes I have to go back up and scroll and find out what the heck was that question. And let's see, who's overbuilt. On my email, none of that is capitalized. It's all lowercase. There's some lag, but not as much as I was suspecting going from the stock, because the stock turbos on those things are pretty responsive. That's a nice thing, and guys like that. And when you go up in turbo size, just like when you change a camshaft on other cars, I don't know yet on the Omni, but on there's always a trade-off in low speed power, and there is on a turbo too. I think a Gen 4 aluminum block is a better fit for a resleeving. An L33 is a aluminum block, but it's a Gen 3, Gen 4 kind of hybrid one. Richard, first time from New Zealand. That's interesting. My son and I were talking today about he would like to take a trip to New Zealand. If you ran a late 90s, early 2000 Vortec 2200, common in the S10s. The decent aftermarket stock was 120 horsepower, 140 foot-pounds. People claim they could get 400 out of them. They could get 400 out of them with a lot of boost. Is that what you're talking about? Would an LT4 Hot Cam work good on a 350 Vortec for a marine application? I don't know. What's the intake duration on that? And is it a wet exhaust thing? I'm worried about that cam being a little too big for a wet exhaust application. How high in temp can a Gen 4 aluminum 5.3 go before damage? Well, the factory ECU will shut that down based on temperature. I've never seen anybody get one hot enough to melt. You don't really want to take any cast aluminum above 225 degrees Fahrenheit. The exhaust temperature is a lot hotter than that. What heads and intake would you recommend for a 383 and a K5 Blazer? That's going to be used barely over stock cam for mostly daily driving, some off-roading. I would put a small one in that, especially with a 308 gear. 383 is going to be nice, but put something that's like 218 at 50 or smaller. The one I'm looking at is 220, 224, 110, 480 lift. Years ago, I saw a turbo engine with a big gulp valve between the turbo and the throttle body that was supposed to eliminate the lag on full throttle. It opened under vacuum and closed when boosted. Was that on the a throttle body mounted in front of the turbo? I went to 260, just maxed it out, and I went to limp mode. Yeah, they will do that. They will try to save themselves, which I like. It's the Melling 222280, the hot cam clone. Oh, James, let's see. You gave me the specs on it. I don't know about a 220 on a small block. Does it? I'd be a little worried about. I'd be a little worried about reversion on that. Although it doesn't. It's almost a single pattern, so it might be okay. Is supercharger specific oil necessary for M9? It's expensive. I bought some recently. I didn't use supercharger oil when I did mine on the dyno because we didn't have any. So I think I put gear oil in it. The grease for the bearings is ridiculous. If that's what you're talking about, I just put regular grease in the bearings. I mean, it already had some from the stuff before, but I put a little bit more in. And I just put like heavy duty bearing grease in it. Upper hose collapse, put some water in it. Seems to run okay. Just finished ordering 38 millimeter intake and 31 millimeter Inconel exhaust valves for the G10. Where did you get the valves at? And can you tell me what the length is for the stock stuff? Do you know what that is for the 87 G10 turbo motor that I have? Stock is 3527. Thank you. Does SI or any of those guys have valves, or does Ferrea or any of those guys have them? I would like to put an Inconel exhaust valve on it. I really like the L92 with the 234, 247 in your 6.2 vid. If you stroked it to 15, how much more cam do I need to get the same curve? Well, the curve is going to be raised. Are you wanting to make peak power at the same RPM? What can I expect throwing a Trailblazer SS on a 5.3 with a 214, 222 cam? Why don't you look at the Truck Norris results on the 5.3 L33? That will give you a fairly good idea on that. I don't think that cam is going to be as good, but Talked to the machinist and said the 5.7 LS is not good for resleeving. I don't use those. I don't use the LS1. I don't use the LS2, and I don't use the LS3. The L33 is better. I have used the LS6 before. We sleeved one of those, but the L33 and the LH6 I think are the ones that that I've been using. Do you know the lift limit on stock GT40 heads, engines 96,302 and run Holley carb? I don't know. I don't remember. I think you need to change the springs, but I don't remember what the retainer to seal clearance was. It's been a long time since I worked on a stock set of those heads. You'll just have to measure that, but that's really easy to check. Red and tacky Lucas grease. Yeah, we had some of that. I don't know what the factory length is for the Mark 1. Okay. They'll make you some free. I think the valves were $40 each. Man, that's like Ferrari money. What are all the valve diameters and millimeters? Well, these are Suzuki motors, so that's why. A good Polar electric fuel pump for carbs. We always ran the Holley ones. On your Mustang, were you closely monitoring nitrous bottle temp? No, I had no idea what it was. Never even looked at it. Didn't have a pressure gauge on it, just turned it on and hit the button again and again and again and again. When we run them on the engine dyno, we do measure pressure and temperature. And what we like to do, Brule likes to have it about 92 degrees, but the whole thing needs to be 92 degrees. So the way that we do that is we have a water bath. It's like the little nitrous jacuzzi, we call it. So we set the bottle in this water bath that has a heater element on it, and we get the water temperature at 92 degrees, set the bottle in there, and then we keep taking the bottle out and swirling it around and mixing it up and put it in there. And as soon as the bottle is basically uniformly 92 degrees, we normally get between 1,000 or to 1,100 PSI, and then we run it like that. And on that note, will dual throttle bodies make more power than a single 105 on the 5.3? More people are saying no. Can't wait to see what you do on your 2.5. I took the balance shafts out, and I balance shafts out, and I've always regretted it. I honestly think that, and I think that's the way about the balance shafts on almost all of the motors, is that guys that take the balance shafts out, I think that they're looking in the wrong spot for power. I think that there's way better power to be had other places. And quite honestly, I would want to, if you're driving it around most of the time, you're driving it around and not racing it around, not in boost, not at high RPM. Why not have the thing drive nice too? Yeah, I would kind of like to do that test if it was like a quick and easy kind of thing. If it didn't require fabricating or anything, I would probably do that test. I'm pro balance shaft. Yeah, I like it. I like it in the 4.3s. I like it in these, in the 2.5s. Victor, South Harbor, what's up? I believe James is talking about an in the tank or an inline. It's probably an external one. And the ones that we use were Holley Blues or Holley Reds or something. A1000 is too much. Just need a 3 to 30 to 40 gallons per hour. There's probably a bunch of them if you go online. Just needs more fuel. Yeah. I have both of mine above the tank and they work fine. That's against the rules. You can't do that. But on that note, it is time to go. I'll be back tomorrow morning, and I'm going to start trying to get videos up. I've got a bunch of stuff I'm working on. It's just I get so busy. There's lots of cool stuff though. Lots of neat this year. Lots of cool, neat, bigger stuff that's going to happen. So stay tuned. It'll be exciting. I'll see you guys all tomorrow.